Welcome to Commander Central, episode 179, and today we're taking a look at listener Tom's Fblthp and the Bureaucratic Wave Mill Deck. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Fblthp. I think that's correct. I think I pronounced that close to correct.
Flip. I'm just going to call him Flip.
I was closer on Fblthp than we are on
most people's names.
Names that we wound up doing. Yeah. So I have not seen a Fblthp deck before. I'm looking forward to busting this one out.
I have not either.
So before we get to that, any fun games worth talking about? Anybody played this last week?
I got to win with my Tuvasa deck.
You did? How'd that go?
Great, because I had the Azeri Claw of Progress deck pretty much fogging every one of my attacks.
Oh, okay.
But I had a Bear Umbra on Tuvasa, so that's all I was doing is I just want the attack trigger, because I would have gained like 30 life every time I hit someone. He's like, I don't care about the trigger. I'm like, oh, you're going to care here soon.
It'll eventually be an issue.
That's the game I was defensive with my Rift, and I ended up winning.
You should put a Questing Beast in your deck.
It's not an enchantment.
That's true. That would be able to poke through damage, but yeah.
Yeah, it would be. I have enough things that make it unblockable, are just...
Questing Beast reads that damage can't be prevented.
True.
So no fog.
Gets around fogs.
They're like fog, and you're like, wah-ha-ha-ha, surprise!
It's one of the 40 abilities on that stupid card.
Like the Great Henge.
Right, yes. It's green. What do you know? Big surprise. It's amazing.
Yeah, but someone eventually blew up the Spike Weaver, and he's like, well, I'm going to die. I'm like, yeah, you are.
I didn't have anything too amazing worth going into, but hopefully we'll have some stories this week, because I think we're going to try to get get an extra session in maybe on Saturday.
Ooh.
So hopefully I'll have a few extra games worth talking about. 'Cause our shop was busy and has been busy considering it's the dead of winter in January. We've had, when we've gone to play on Tuesdays, there's been 24
to 30 people every week.
5-6 pods firing off most of the time. I don't think I've had to wait for a game, and I don't know how long. There's just always people ready to play.
I mean, it helps. School's back in session, the college is back, stuff like that.
So, anything else we want to jump into or talk about here before we fire it up?
I'm ready to rock and roll on this deck tech.
All right, let's do it. We had a couple questions we usually ask to listeners they send us, and you want to read the first one here to us, Max?
Yeah, so the first question, like always, is what is their meta like? And Tom says he plays at 3 to 4 different LGSs around the Bay Area and sees a huge variety of decks, very few stacks or direct combat damage decks. Though we do see these, lots of weirdness, lots of combos, meta heuristic. If you take a 5-minute turn, you better win on that turn or the next.
That's a good probably rule of thumb, I would say, for most people.
He gave us a little bit of a breakdown. 70% of the games last 8 to 10 turns. 20% go past turn 10 and between 10 and 20. And then 10% are hyper-competitive games that are over by turn 5 or 6.
Okay.
He says his philosophy when building decks is similar to Zach from Commander Social. Build decks as tight as possible to make up for my deficiencies as a Magic player.
Build at 100%, play at 50%, I think is what Zach says.
Yep.
Equals out to 75.
That's such a bad motto, though.
But it always makes me laugh.
It definitely does.
Whenever he says it, I always laugh.
Oh, boy.
Build at 100, play at 50.
So we asked, what are the weaknesses of the deck, and what areas should we focus on? We got back the answer of Fblthp is just a bit slower to get going and has challenging win cons, which I can imagine in a single color deck with a 1/1 for 2 mana.
Right.
Doesn't really have a dedicated purpose.
And has to go back in your deck to really get full value out of. And we always ask what the budget limit is for individual card upgrades, and he says there's no real limit. He prefers Dana's methodology of unknown and underappreciated cards. If the card is really worth it and the win's worth it, then maybe it's worth upgrading into the deck.
And his description of his Archidect deck list here says it started off as a homunculus tribal deck, which, man, that seems like a really challenging thing to pull off given the limited amount of homunculuses out there. Then it pivoted to a mono blue Super Friends deck, and now he's looking to work on the self-mill theme, and he tries to use advisors to bury himself and others in an administrative nightmare with Jace's help. So, mono blue mill. We might as well start things off here by reading Fblthp the Lost to you. He's 1 in a blue for a legendary creature homunculus. And for those that don't recall, Fblthp is basically the large-eyed homunculus you see in a couple different pieces of art throughout Ravnica. So he was kind of a meme character that they finally just gave a card to in War of the Spark. He's a 1/1, and when Fblthp the Lost enters the battlefield, you draw a card. If it entered from your library or was cast from your library, you draw 2 cards. And when Fblthp becomes the target of a spell, shuffle Fblthp into its owner's library. So that's just a weird card in general.
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of said, Homunculus Tribal, there's only 14 mono blue homunculi.
Oof. And none of them probably, I mean, I don't know if any of them are any good. There's probably one or two I could see there being some weird one that I can't think of right now.
Cinder
But
Split would probably be
true.
the best one.
Yeah, that's a pretty rough,
Yeah.
it's a rough ground to walk on, but I respect the attempt. So first things here, let's look at the land base in mono blue. 30 lands.
That's pretty low
That's
for a mono
bold.
blue deck.
That's tough. I mean, in I don't know, again, like we've discussed this before, there's a lot of places that have weird house mull rules and stuff too. So that is something to consider. Maybe it's just a place where like everyone says multi you have hit 3 or something. I don't know. Maybe he's just fine with 30.
I mean, the average CMC of the deck is 3.07, so it's not
crazy light.
not crazy
I
light.
think I'm running 33 in Edric, and it's sub 2.
Yeah.
My Talron deck is under 2 as well, I think, and I'm at 35. But a lot of it's play style, what you have in the deck too, so that seems lighter than I would be comfortable with myself, but I'm guessing it must work for him. There's 24 islands here, and the non-basics are Halimar Depths, which comes into play tapped and lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. There's a Lotus Field here, a Manamo, School at Water's Edge, that lets you untap target legendary permanent. There's Nykthos, take advantage of all the blue stuff you're playing. There's a Skyline Cascade, which enters battlefield tapped, and when it does, target creature and opponent control doesn't untap during that player's next untap step. And a Moonring Island, which comes into play tapped, but it counts as an island if you are, doubling mana off islands or need to search for islands. It is fetchable. And you can find a blue and look at the top card of target player's library, and do this only if you control 2 or more blue permanents. So you can look at the top card of your library, someone else's, whatever. Can't necessarily do anything with that, but it's information on a land. So what do you guys think of this land base?
It's light. I think we covered that.
Yeah.
That's an understatement. This is like super light.
Yeah.
There has to be a mulligan rule or something, or he missed some lands when he's putting them in here, which is something the deck's 100 cards, so...
I mean, he's running quite a few mana rocks, but not in my opinion, not enough to make up for only 30 lands.
And, it's blue. There's, there's blue draw that lets you dig down and find stuff, but there's not that much blue draw. It's not like you're running 40 different ponder variants that are always going to make sure if you have 1 or 2 lands, you can probably find the 3rd or 4th. There's not that many in here. I'll be curious what he says after hearing us talk about it. It's less than I would be okay with running.
Even in competitive decks that we build for our 1v1 tournaments, we're never down that low in lands.
Yeah, that's pretty lean. I've seen CDH lists running that many, but that's a whole different deal.
And
So
they're probably also running like 30 mana rocks. Or
right,
something
right.
Like
Well,
that.
yes, and they have Mana Crypt and Mana Vault and Lotus Petal and Mox Opal and Chrome Mox and whatever. So that makes a difference there. Is there anything that you think you'd like to see him add as a land here?
I mean, seeing that this is a mono blue deck, we just talked about on our last show, Mystic Sanctuary would go great in this deck. Bring something back if it's just a very nice utility land.
Worst case, it comes into play tapped, but like best case, hey, I just got back my Cyclonic Rift because it came into play on turn 6, or I guess you probably wouldn't have Rift by then, but like whatever. It brings back a draw spell that you can reuse again.
Could single target Rift. It does do that.
That's true. Yeah, you single target Rift, and the next turn Mystic Sanctuary it back for the Overload version when everyone's guards are down because you've got it in your graveyard. Yeah, that could be. Anything else? Yeah, I got nothing.
I can't even think of all the blue utility lands.
There's a few, like I think this looks pretty close to what I was running.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the you could run the blue castle because that lets you scry 2 for 4 mana, I think.
Yeah.
There are 12 artifacts in this, and a lot of them look like to be key pieces of the deck. Maybe adding Academy Ruins or Buried Ruin into the deck would be nice. Stuff like that.
We always harp on Scavenger Grounds as a utility land. It's great. We always
Especially
talk
when you're
about
playing a mill deck.
Yeah, because you're going to be in trouble if you run into that person who's playing Heavy Reanimator. You're just going to give them gas. Same thing, like I always want to have 1 or 2 land removal lands. Particularly, you can maybe get away with not as many if you're playing another color that can answer lands. but mono blue can't.
No.
I mean, maybe, okay, capsize or something, but like outside of 1 or 2 bounce cards, you have a really tough time
Still
responding
not really
to a land.
controlling
You're right,
the
right.
lands, though.
All right, so we mentioned the mana rock cycle. Max, why don't you tell us what there's for artifacts here?
Yeah, so we have 12 artifacts. We have a Basalt Monolith, Gauntlet of Power, Isochron Scepter, Mesmeric Orb, Mind Crank, Rings of Brighthearth, Sands of Delirium, Sapphire Medallion, Soul Ring, the Chain Veil, Trepanation Blade, and Vidalcan Orrery.
So we'll just mention the easy ones here first. Basalt Monolith, Sapphire Medallion, Soul Ring. Those are basically mana rocks, but or the equivalent of in the case of Sapphire Medallion. But there is only those. That's it for extra mana sources and for ramp. What about the rest? Gauntlet, I guess, is a double or two. But
Gauntlet's a doubler. Mind Crank plays into the mill strategy. So does the
so
Blade.
So does Orb.
Yep. Chain Veil is here because there's tons of Planeswalkers. There's 7 Planeswalkers in this deck, which we'll cover later. And Rings of Brighthearth is just a way to double up all the abilities on your Planeswalkers and/or create infinite mana with Basalt Monolith.
Yep. And with the infinite mana, there's things like Sands of Delirium that you can then use to infinitely mill somebody out.
Yep.
So there is an outlet for the mana. There's not a ton of them, but like there's one right here.
I would like to see Vidalcan Orrery swapped for Leyline of Anticipation.
Oh, sure.
Just because it gives you devotion.
In mono blue, it gives you
Yes.
devotion, and you have the chance of being able to cast it for free on turn 1.
Yep.
And it's not like, enchantments are probably harder to remove than artifacts too.
Yeah.
And it's a cheaper card. Trade your Vidalcan Orrery for a Leyline and something else that's good.
Yep.
No, that's a good call. Because I think, in this style of deck, being able to catch somebody off guard with mill is fairly useful.
The other card that I wrote down that I wanted to see either cut or add cards to it to benefit it more is Isochron Scepter. There's only, I think there was 4 targets in the deck for it, but nothing
Sure.
that really abuses Isochron Scepter like what you would prefer to do.
And not like there's ways to really tutor up things really frequently too that are going to go on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isochron was one I didn't feel like had enough targets maybe necessarily. It's not that it's not a really good card.
Yeah, there's 3 targets for it: Arcane Denial, Cyclonic Rift, and High Tide. So it's probably getting High Tide.
And hey, if you put yeah, right. Like I would love to have High Tide every turn on there.
See, I would like to put something else on there called Dramatic Reversal
There you go.
with Mesmeric Orb. And then you put a Nexus of Fate in your deck, and you win.
Yeah, you do.
I'm really surprised there's not more mana rocks in here.
Yeah.
Given the low land count, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, even a Mind Stone that lets you draw Arcane
Right.
Signet's always going to make you your blue mana. Even the
Everflowing Chalice for 2, or the fact that you can scale it up if you need to. Thought Vessel, is really good. Fellwar Stone, who cares if it makes colorless or not? Might make blue sometimes. If it doesn't, it's probably still pretty good. Yeah, I don't necessarily subscribe to the notion that you need 10 ramp sources in every deck. Sometimes you don't have room, and sometimes you just this isn't how the deck plays, and I'm fine with having a couple. I'm just not sure if this is quite enough for this deck. It feels like it's not enough, given the also low land count. So, Mesmeric Orb is an absolute beast. I can speak from experience playing against Chris's deck, though.
Oh,
That
yeah.
card's massively powerful here. And, Sapphire Medallion, I think the Medallion cycles get overlooked sometimes in monocolor decks. I see a lot of mono decks that don't run them. They're crazy good in most mono decks.
For sure. And they haven't been printed very often. I think
Yeah.
the Commander set and the original Tempest printings, right?
Well, the blue one's up to,
Almost
the one in this deck is
$20.
almost $20, yeah. And it was not that many years ago. It was like 2.
Oof.
So, all right, let's jump over to the partner to Artifact, which is enchantments. And there's only 3 of them. There's Fraying Sanity, there's Sphinx's Tutelage, and there's Power Artifact. Fraying Sanity is from a maquette block, 2 in a blue, enchant player. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn. So it's kind of the equivalent of like is a Painful Quandary? No, what's the damage dealing one that deals damage to you based on the amount of damage you've taken that turn already? The black enchantment.
Oh, I saw it get played this week.
Yeah, wound Reflection.
Yes.
It's kind of the mill version of Wound Reflection.
Isn't there a creature that does that too?
And yes, from Battle Bond.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought Matt Birdie played one of
That's
those.
what- yeah.
We say, yeah. So there's Sphinx's tutelage. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into her graveyard. So if you do an infinite thing or a heavy draw thing, you're going to clock somebody with a bunch of draw there. And the last one that Chris mentioned earlier in the artifact section, talking about a combo with Basalt Monolith, is Power Artifact, an old school antiquities card that is not cheap at all. And it reduces the activation cost of artifacts by 2, but it can't reduce them below 1. But in Basalt Monolith's case, where it has an activated ability,
Make 3, pay 1, untap, make 3,
Yep.
Pay 1. You're netting 2 mana every time.
so it's a way to go infinite with Basalt Monolith, or I think Grim Monolith also
Yes.
goes infinite with it. So
Yes.
it's an infinite mana generator here in a deck that has sinks for it, whether it's milling somebody else out or drawing yourself down to use Jace or a Labman win here. All right, should we look at Planeswalkers now?
Is there anything we want to add to enchantments?
Okay, well, what do you guys think? Is there anything you'd like to see that you would like to see here?
I know it's high on the CMC side, but I really like Mind's Dilation, especially in what sounds like more of a spell slinger meta. So
Yeah.
Mind's Dilation is 5 blue. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell of each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. There's no until end of turn restriction on
Yep.
that, so they just sit there until you want to cast them. It is 7 mana, but it sounds like there's not much combat, so people probably are doing a lot of instant speed stuff on everybody's turn.
That's one of those cards that whenever somebody else casts it against me, it does really good. Whenever I've tried to run it, it's terrible.
So season's past.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And there's a few of those cards that feel that way, and that's one. Grave Betrayal. Whenever I've tried to run Grave Betrayal, it's just been a waste of my entire turn casting it. Whenever somebody else runs it, they get so much value.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ones that definitely falls into that category. Anything else under enchantments though that jump out? There's not a lot of blue mill enchantment things that care about it really.
Yeah.
All right, Planeswalkers. What do we have there, Max?
7 Planeswalkers. So we got Jace Beleren, Jace Architect of Thought, Jace Ingenious Mind Mage, Jace Memory Adept, Jace Wielder of Mysteries, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Teferi Temporal Archmage. So
That's a lot of blue Planeswalkers.
that's a lot of blue Planeswalkers. That's a lot of Jace.
And that's probably why the Chain Veil is included, like you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you can alt Teferi,
Yep.
being able to activate Planeswalkers on everybody else's turn.
But even being able to like double Jace, Wielder of Mysteries ability is pretty good. Draw 7 cards for his 8 mana ult.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really solid card. I get why it's in here with this many Jaces. I wonder if there's a plan to pare that number down, because this was a Super Friends deck for a while. I wonder if some of that's remnant stuff. Not that they're all not good, they are. A lot of them have some kind of a mill effect. What do you guys think?
I think this is how he's making up some of the draw.
Yeah.
I mean, Jace Beleren lets him draw a card, lets everybody draw a card. Architect of Thought is probably just it's a mini factor fiction, right?
Yeah.
Ingenious Mind Mage, it draws a card and it untaps all of his petitioners. Memory Adept, yeah, definitely the mill right there. Backbreaking when Chris plays it.
Yeah.
Even though every time I play it, I only uptick it to draw a card.
Other Planeswalker you'd like to see show up in this deck?
Ugh, mono blue? No.
No.
First Tameo is really good. She's mono blue.
Yeah, but I don't think that fits the strategy.
Not
of-
really.
Yeah, because she taps something down, and then you draw cards equal to the number of tap things that someone controls. And
Yeah, it's Planeswalkers are tricky to try to evaluate when you're looking at like 7 of them too or something like this. It's hard to really tell what the interactions are. They're all Jaces too. I do like though that there's this weird Planeswalker sub-team in this deck, 'cause that's not what you would expect to see in a Fblthp deck.
yes,
Right.
So, and I'm guessing the Wielder of Mysteries, the passive ability, if you would draw a card where your library has no cards in it, you win the game. That probably happens sometimes too. It's a backup kind of lab man effect in this deck.
I mean, if you really want to be that person, you could put Narset in, although
Sure.
it's kind of stacksy. But if you're the one drawing all the cards, it helps you search for your pieces for your combo, and it's 3 mana.
she might just be worth it if the meta is where it's more Spellslinger based. So
Yeah.
you prevent the people from drawing cards, and then you start milling them out, and then you just kind of put them in that lock position.
Right.
I would be probably tempted to peel off maybe 1 or 2 of these Jaces. In particular, I don't know if Architect. I mean, they're not bad though.
I think I'd pull the Teferi. If I chose any one of them, it'd be the Teferi.
Yeah, because he's really only there to either untap stuff Oh, he does do some card filtering, but yeah, it's mainly the alt you're looking for right there.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, how about jumping over to sorceries here, Chris? What do we have for sorceries?
We have a few sorceries.
8 to be exact.
Yes, there are 8 sorceries. We have Fascination, Increasing Confusion, Startled Awake, Time Stretch, Tome Scour, Traumatize, Tunnel Vision, and Windfall.
So one thing I will note before we get any further, Time Stretch is a targeted spell. And I'm going to mention that because once, many years ago, with a Leyline of Anticipation in play, Chris, someone cast a Time Stretch targeting themselves. And with my and with my Leyline, I flashed in Chancellor of the Spire, which is my Sphinx deck, which lets you cast a spell from an opponent's graveyard. So I cast his Time Stretch, giving me 2 extra turns before him, and then took my first extra turn, and top decked Stolen Identity, which I could put on the Sphinx to attack on my second extra turn, launch
The second time
a second copy of the Sphinx, which because when you cast something with the Sphinx, it doesn't exile the spell, and then cast a Time Stretch again, in loop someone else's extra turn spell.
That's why I like playing extra turn spells that actually get exiled themselves, or they go
Makes
somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it prevents your opponents from, backbreaking it into you. And if you're not going to abuse it, that it's sitting in your graveyard, you might as well play the other ones.
In Time Stretch costs 10 mana. I mean, you're paying for the privilege of doing that. So anything here you guys want to comment about either removing or adding, or have any questions about?
I like Time Stretch. We just talked about it. 10 mana is a lot. There are many other extra turn spells that cost way less mana.
Yes.
And like Chris says, they either exile themselves or they go back in your library. I love Increasing Confusion, especially with the flashback. It's just a fun mill card.
A lot of value in that card as well.
Yeah.
I would take out Tome Scour, and I would replace it with an instant called Thought Scour. It is only 2 cards that you mill, but you also get to draw a card out of it.
Sure.
So, I mean, if, say, you slap that's something you slap on your Ice-Crown Scepter, so you hit someone for 2 every turn, but you get to draw a card out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like Tunnel Vision a lot here. I'll read that briefly because it's an old card from the first Ravnica set, so at this point we're looking at like 14 years ago or something. It's 5 and a blue. Name a card. Target player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until the named card is revealed. If it is, that player puts the rest of the revealed cards in his or her graveyard and puts the named card on top of his or her library. Otherwise, that player shuffles his or her library. Well, in this case, you're going to be named Fblthp most of the time.
Yep.
Which then, once you're able to cast them, you're going to draw 2 cards off it anyway, and you're going to fill up your graveyard. Tunnel Vision is one of those cards that doesn't see much play unless it's doing something really, really stupid in a deck.
Yep.
I've seen it in Bruno Light of Alabaster decks before where they just name something dumb just to fill up their entire... It winds up kind of being like a Hermit Druid then at that point. Like the purpose winds up being
What's
to
really
not
fun to
hit.
do that is you sit back with the Scry land, and you hit... So you go Scry, and you look at the top card, and you put it on the bottom, and you name that card.
Yeah.
So you put your entire deck in, and then you're like, attack.
Anything else from you, Max, about this mix of cards?
No, I think they look fine.
I mean, there's probably some slight variance on like Fascination that you could put in here that would give you a few more options to use that mana, but I don't know how many of those you need.
Right.
So, and is that better than I don't know. Kind of comes down to personal preference for a lot of this, I think.
Yeah.
Particularly for a mill deck in mono blue.
In a meta where there's not a lot of combat.
Right.
Because there's stuff like the sorcery from Eldritch Moon that you make 2/2 zombies for all the instants and sorceries in your graveyard.
Yep.
But if it's not a very big combat meta, that card probably doesn't fit in this deck very well.
You're not going to see a lot of stuff in graveyards until it's basically too late. How about instants here, Chris? What do we have there?
We have 11 instants. We have Arcane Denial, Archive Trap, Blue Sun Zenith. We'll skip that one. Cryptic Command, Cyclonic Rift, Disallow, Force of Negation, Frantic Search, High Tide, and Stroke of Genius.
And the one Chris skipped and might be in here just to troll me by Tom is Cancel.
Actually, I think the reason it's in here is because if it's up to date as to what versions he has, it is the full art textless version.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a good looking card. I can see that. Otherwise, don't run Cancel, people. There's a gazillion better versions of it. I think there's at least one that mills. If the spell was countered, they mill 3 cards or something.
Something like that, yeah.
One of Max's favorites here, Arcane Denial.
I love Arcane Denial. It's cheap, it's efficient, and letting your opponent draw 2 cards most of the time probably isn't going to hurt you.
I actually just put this into my Sphinx deck and pulled out Render Silent.
Okay.
Because I hated that
double...
deck. That deck is so mana hungry, and leaving up double blue and a white versus like just 1 blue, so much easier for me in that deck. Arcane Denial is a great spell. Archive Trap is not one you see very often. It's an instant trap from Zendikar. If an opponent searches his or her library this turn, you may pay 0 rather than paying the mana cost, and target opponent puts the top 13 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard.
Field of Ruin with this card is stupid.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I learned something, and I'm not sure if this is actually what happens, but we read the card very closely, and everyone agreed to it, so everyone online or whoever's listening to us can just, rip into me for it. But Field of Ruin reads, you destroy target land, non-basic land, then each player, so the entire table searches.
Yeah.
Not just the person you destroyed and yourself, it's every player.
So what is that? What's the interaction that it does with Archive Trap?
You force them to search because it's not a May. They have to
search.
search.
That's true, yeah.
Yep, and then you can cast Archive Trap for free.
That's right, yeah.
Very nice. So add Field of Ruin, I guess is what Chris is saying.
Right. Got a few other big kind of X-draw spells. Stroke of Genius is one. Blue Sun Zenith is one. High Tide's obviously the best version of that card that's ever been printed. It lets your big blue turn turn into a giant blue turn. Rift is in here. Cryptic Command is pretty great. Disallow, Force of Negation. Frantic Search has a little bit of a draw thing that also lets you discard the cards you want discarded.
And untap 3 lands.
And then untap 3 lands.
It's a phenomenal draw spell because it's pretty much for free.
Yes.
You draw 2, discard 2, get the lands back. Or in the case of, let's tap Nykthos for a butt ton of mana, cast a spell, untap the 2 lands in Nykthos, let's tap Nykthos for a butt ton of mana again.
Right.
And do it all over again.
Yep.
Any instance you guys want to talk about here? Want to add or would like to remove, you think?
Yes, I would like to put a Nexus of Fate in here.
I was going to say the same thing.
I do like the interaction of Nexus of Fate and Mesmeric Orb when you can mill yourself out.
Okay.
Because Nexus of Fate always goes back into your deck, so you never mill yourself out.
Yeah, the very few counter spells that, exile the spell on counter of the resolution,
Yes.
There's so few of them, and on the off chance it does get milled into exile, very rarely happens as well. It did happen to Chris a couple weeks ago. That was funny.
It does happen, yeah.
That was a shame. I'm like, oh no.
But yeah, I totally agree. Nexus is just a great overall card, and I think it's fair for an extra turn spell.
And Disallow was in here as a counter spell as well.
The other card I was thinking about is a 4-mana instant called Turnabout.
Okay.
I do believe it's from one of the Urza sagas or somewhere around there, one of the Urza sets. I could be wrong on that. But it's 2 colorless, 2 blue. It says tap or untap all target lands or creatures that target player controls, something like that.
I have it pulled up here. So it's 2 and 2 blue. It was from Urza's Saga. Choose artifact, creature, or land. Tap all untapped permanents of the chosen type target player controls, or untap all tapped permanents of that type that player controls.
Yep, it is another way. I play this in my mail deck. It's another way to go ham with your petitioners one turn.
Yep.
Or it's a safety blanket for yourself. Because if someone's like, oh, I got all these creatures I'm about to attack, and you're just like, okay, before you attack, once you're in combat, I play this, I tap all your creatures down, now you can't attack with anything, saves me a turn.
Really good political card.
Yes.
The versatility on it is what I think makes it worth it to play it in a deck like this.
That counterspell, Dana, that you mentioned that mills is Thought Collapse.
Okay. Yep.
The controller of the spell that gets countered mills 3.
Okay. Pretty sure there was one. So thank you for verifying that.
I'm kind of surprised there's no Mystical Tutor.
Yeah.
Especially with the Isochron Scepter. If you need to go get High Tide because you have Isochron Scepter in your hand. I think Narset's Reversal would be fun in this deck because, I'm going to Stroke of Genius, Narset's Reversal it back to my hand and do it all over again.
Yeah, that's the thing about Narset's Reversal. Being able to counter your own spells and bounce them back to your hand is really, really useful. Or copy it, I should say, and replay it again the next turn for the same thing. Yeah. That's why it was a potential Rifty. So let's look at the creatures. 28 creatures. Start with Consecrated Sphinx. There's a Dreamborn Muse, a Fleet Swallower, Jace's Mind Raker, Jace Vryn's Prodigy, Lab Maniac, Mirror Mad Phantasm, 20 Persistent Petitioners, and a Thassa's Oracle. So all 3 of the Altwin, if you can draw a card and can't draw a card, ones are in the stack. 20 Persistent Petitioners. How many are you running in your Petitioner deck, Chris?
I think I have 25. And I actually looked at my deck, and I think I'm cutting all of them and making it a different deck. I don't like the play style of the Petitioners.
One-trick pony type of thing?
Well, they pretty much turn into jump blockers, honestly, in our meta, is what they are.
Yeah.
Sure. You can't keep them alive long enough to do their thing.
Yep.
Or you can't stay along live enough.
Oh, me staying alive is not the issue. It's they can't, because in order, board wipes happen, or you have to block, and I mean, they just don't do their thing.
That's fair.
Now, if I could do
like a Bragolum.
What's that 10 mana sorcery reveal?
Omniscience?
No, the green one. Because then I would do green.
Oh, Primal Surge.
Yes, and just be like, oh, they're all on the field. What's up now?
Zuri Claw Progress Petitioners.
Yeah, there we go.
They all get bigger.
I would probably do like a Damia Sage of Stone or something, or a Muldrotha or something, because if you're playing mill, you're going to end up milling yourself too, so I want to be able to reanimate things.
Well, so Consecrated Sphinx is just a great draw, Ulwit. Dreamborn Muse, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the top X cards of the library into the graveyard, where X is the number of cards in their hand.
I need to get my hand on one of these cards. I didn't realize this card existed.
I have not seen it in a long time. But yeah, that's a pretty solid ability there, particularly in a deck that's hopefully going to draw a bunch of cards.
Exactly.
And there's Fleet Swallower, which is just a bounce based on the number of islands you control. Jace's Mindseeker, Jace's Verin's Prodigy, both sides of which are pretty decent. There's the Lab Maniac. There's Mirror Mad Phantasm, which we're going to find out what it does here in just a second. And the Petitioners and Oracle, which is another alt-win con. But let's talk about briefly the Mirror Mad Phantasm. You want to read that to us, Max? 'Cause that's a weird, interesting card.
So it's a spirit from original Innistrad block. It's a 5/1 for 3 blue. It has flying, and it says, let me open the card up. 1 and a blue for an activated ability. Mirror Mad Phantasm's owner shuffles it into his or her library. If that player does, he or she reveals cards from the top of that library until a card named Mirror Mad Phantasm is revealed. That player puts all the cards onto the battlefield, puts that card onto the battlefield, and all other cards revealed into his or her graveyard. So it's just a way to fuel the Labman, Oracle, Jace win cons. Because you only have 1, unlike Constructed, where you have 4.
Yeah, it's a great little weirdly worded self-mill tool. So you don't do much self-mill in your deck, do you, Chris?
Not on purpose. Like, I have had it set up where I have drop Mesmeric Orb on turn 2, and I'm just like, tap all the lands repeatedly just to mill myself because I'm looking for that Nexus of Fate, because this is my plan for this game.
That's your way to solve it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, like with my deck personally, and he might run into the same situation, is your opening hand dictates how your game's going to be played. You can't play the game the same exact way with a deck like this. You got to build off of what cards are in your opening hand so you know which direction you have to go.
And the players you're playing with dictate that sometimes too. Sometimes you're playing with a group and you're like, these guys never remember to do that, or like don't grasp the thing you're about to do, and another player group understands it and they'll stop it. So that makes a big difference too.
Kentucky Fried Chicken homie who plays Vela the Nightclad every time you play your mill deck, and you just lose to him because he's like, I have the automatic wing card in my deck.
Mirrodin Besieged, yeah. Card's so good. I did get another Attempsis kill on a person this week.
Wow.
That always feels pretty good as well. So any additions or subtractions here from you guys?
I mean, I think it just depends on how the deck plays.
Yeah.
For the Petitioner level, 20 probably seems solid for him. I don't know. I think it's fine. It's hard. It's hard to know because it's mill.
Sure, yes.
You almost have to play the deck to see. Like, for me personally, I don't like the Petitioner's route. This deck seems more of a, and I hate to say it, an Azami knockoff deck.
Sure.
Very similar to it, but doing with the ability to mill your opponents at the same time.
Probably a fairer Azami. Azami you always get those turns where like the person's like, oh no, they're just gonna play a wizard into a wizard into a wizard and draw.
Yeah, see, Azami draws, whereas this is milling, so it's a little bit more fair in the purpose of it. So
takes longer to win, a lot easier to interrupt. No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think these are the creatures I would like. I like seeing things like Mirrored Mad Phantasm in decks. It's a great card. Same with the Dreamborn Muse. That's a really good card too in this deck, and I like seeing that kind of thing.
I might have to go pick up one of each of those for my deck now.
At least they're relatively inexpensive still.
Yeah.
For now, until the Commander Central bump.
Yep.
Jacks them up from $2 to $2.20.
Chris's fault.
Right.
Just wait, I will break this deck yet, and I will make this a tier 1 fun commander deck.
Flip for fun.
I guess. So what are your final thoughts here, gentlemen?
We mentioned this, I think, on Monday's show. Mill's running around our shop pretty crazy right now. This is a really interesting take on it, using Fblthp instead of your 3 colors or 2 colors for your petition, or even like something like Phoenix. I do like it's more based around the lab man wins.
Yes.
Not my play style, but game's got to end.
Right.
And
no, yeah.
you have 3 ways to do it, and the Mirror Mat is a great way to just make it all happen right away.
And if you see like the mill thing isn't working out for you, that's a nice backup plan to have in your deck, particularly now that we have 3 different versions of the same thing.
Yeah.
So I get it.
I do think you either need to up the land count just a little bit or the mana rock count a little bit just to maybe smooth out those opening hands.
Sure.
With this being a slow start, having your opening hand with a couple more lands or even just a couple more mana rocks might smooth out the whole game in general.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of the big win cons are mana hungry win cons.
Yeah, I'm. Sometimes you see it and you're just like, well, as long as I have 2 mana, they'll be fine. This isn't a 2 mana, you'll be fine kind of deck. So I would definitely agree with you there. I feel like it needs a couple more at least to function at the level I would be comfortable with.
Yeah.
I like the deck though.
Yeah,
I like the concept. I like the fact they took a weird corner case commander and then found a weird thing to do with it. I think on the last Monday show I was talking about trying to build Lysolda Infect. So this is kind of right up my alley. I'm kind of doing a similar thing, taking a commander that isn't very popular and trying to do a thing that no one really tries to do with it. So, props to you, Tom, for coming up with such a clever deck. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Yes, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it, and we appreciate all of our patrons and just all the listeners out there.
Yes, all you, whether you support us just with listens or support us financially, it's a big deal. It does mean a lot. I still can't entirely wrap my head around the fact that we have patron supporters even after all this time. So that is really amazing. Thank you very much. I believe Tom said he is going to try to be at Vegas this year as well.
Cool.
So hopefully we'll get some reps in this year. Looking forward to that. All right, gentlemen, I think that's going to wrap up this show. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter at UrzaBearWalker. You can find me at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. You can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. And we'll be back on Monday with another regular show. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.